for everyone joining. Thank you for joining this heat pump webinar put on by Wakefield Municipal Gas Department and Abode Energy Management. So tonight, plan to talk to everyone here about not only heat pump technology, but a little bit about the Wakefield municipal program that is running for customers to take advantage of rebates. So I'm going to start it off. My name is Paxton also. I'm a program coordinator with Abode Energy Management. Again, we work alongside Wakefield to help administer this heat pump program. I can throw it off to Jamie.
How you doing, everybody? My name is Jamie Haber, and I am the technical advisor slash decarbonization advisor for the municipal light plants in Massachusetts that Abode has contracted with, including WMGLD. Joe?
Joe Collins from Wakefield Gas and Light Department. I'm a business analyst. We're very excited to have Abode come in. They always do a good job presenting, and they've been a partner of the light department for a number of years now.
I'm Pete Dyer. I'm the general manager of Wakefield Gas and Light. I'd like to thank Joe and Olivia for setting this up and for Abode for this usually very informative session. Hopefully our customers that are both live tonight and those that can watch it on tape get something valuable out of this, because I think as we all see and hear and learn, the evolution of heat pumps in our heating and cooling is critical to our ultimate carbon goals. So I think this is a valuable step, and hopefully our customers get something valuable out of it. Thank you.
All right. So let's start this off here, and then I'll quickly throw it back over to Jamie. But as was just said, so heat pumps have many benefits. So we're talking about, high efficiency systems that provide both heating and cooling. So these systems are effectively able to heat and cool. You're going to improve indoor air quality. A lot of folks are used to operating fossil fuel systems, which usually emit, even in indoors, indoor pollution. So heat pumps have improved air quality, lower cost heating and cooling, typically, especially in municipal light plants. The actual cost of electricity is lower, so the benefits of a heat pump are even greater, and they make a great source of energy efficiency improvements in your home, especially when tied with other measures such as solar panels or an EV, or really a wide range of other technologies that are out there and quickly developing and evolving. I'm going to throw it off to Jamie here.
So what is a heat pump? A lot of people know what an air conditioner is. Pretty much everybody knows what a refrigerator is. These all kind of use the same technology where they're pumping heat. So think about a heat pump like a water pump, where it's not going to create heat, it's pumping it. The water pump doesn't create the water, it just moves it from one place to another. So the heat pump does that by using a refrigerant, which typically has a boiling point well below what we're used to. And because of that, it can actually capture heat energy. Even when it's super cold out, it can capture heat energy from the outside and bring it to the inside. And it can do the same thing in the summer, just brings the heat from the inside of the building to the outside, just like a central air conditioning system would. So it works both directions. It's a remarkably wonderful invention. One of the things that we want to talk about tonight, so a lot of people are going to ask what you talk to the contractors about when you're first starting to think about heat pumps for your house. So I like to talk about three major components of system design. So we're talking about distribution, we're talking about sizing or capacity, and we're talking about something called capacity maintenance. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we go forward here. But these are the main three areas where pretty much every homeowner will have to talk to the contractor about. Go ahead, Paxton. For distribution. So a lot of people will have heating systems in their homes that are baseboard heat or radiator heat or something to that effect, where you don't have existing ductwork in the house. So in that case, you have some options for ductless indoor units. The most traditional is the wall hung. That's the one you usually see in like advertisements and things like that. You see them in hotels a lot too. But wall hung is definitely the most common. And then the next ones you can get are relatively newer to the market, but you can see there's a floor mount one. Kind of takes up the same footprint as like a steam radiator might. So if you have limited wall space, but you're getting rid of a steam system, it's a great option. And then the ceiling cassettes are really kind of cool too. They can actually pump air in 4 different directions at the same time. So it's a really nice place, nice option to have if you have a wide open room that you don't want to have heat just from one side or air conditioning just from one side. If you have ductwork, or if you want to put a ducted system in, there's 2 options. So if you have existing ductwork, you're probably going to go for the central heat pump. It's most likely going to be able to use the existing ductwork that you have and just kind of rely on the same distribution that you have already. And so you would probably change the outside unit to a heat pump, and then you would change the air handler on the inside so they're a matched pair. The other option, something called a compact ducted. And this is something that I see really helpful for homes that have smaller rooms, like many smaller rooms, for example, like a Cape style house, something like that, where you have a second floor that has maybe 3 or 4 bedrooms and a bathroom. Because what you can do with this with the compact ducted, it doesn't take up as much room, and it can effectively heat and cool a smaller room than a mini split would be. Mini split would be the wall mount one. They can be a lot more effective at cooling and heating an entire floor uniformly. Okay, so size and considerations, the Goldilocks effect. So when we're talking about heat pumps, one of the first questions that your heat pump installer is going to want to know is what size system do they need to put in the house. Go ahead, next slide. The one thing that I recommend to have them do is something, it's a very strange calculation name called a manual J calculation. It's a very technical term, but manual J calculation kind of looks at the whole picture of the house, and it takes into consideration everything from insulation levels, which we'll talk about, window size and quality, volume of the space. A lot of different factors go into this, and basically comes up with like a prescription for the house. And the reason this is important, if you have an undersized system that's trying to condition too much space, it's going to be, first of all, running a lot more often than would be necessary. So your electric bills are going to reflect that. Too few indoor units, you might feel like a lack of comfort in some areas because the heat or the cool may not get where you want it to go. It's kind of almost like a glorified space heater at that point for a ductless system. For a ducted system, if it's undersized, it's just gonna be cranking on all the time, and it's not gonna work too well. Go ahead, next slide. On the other side of things, if the system is oversized, and this is much more common, you have too much power trying to go to too little space. And so what ends up happening is something called short cycling, where essentially the heat pump will heat up, reach temperature really quickly, and then drop off, and then heat up again, and then drop off. And what ends up happening with the heat pump, so that's like a situation that would be great for like an oil system or whatever, a gas system would be fine to just kind of do that. With the heat pump, what you really want to have the most efficiency is it just kind of cruising at the lowest level possible. So what ends up happening with a short cycling heat pump is it uses more energy than it's necessary. It can lead to comfort issues in the summer, especially with humidity, because it's not running continuously, so it's not going to get the humidity out as well. And also, it can just result in higher costs all around um, if it's just oversized for the building's need. So when you get the manual J calculation done, and you really only have to have that done by basically the first contractor, because that's a calculation that every contractor can do, but it's not proprietary. So you can share that with different contractors as you're getting different quotes. So let's see the next one, Paxton. Let's see what a perfect size, just right. So the just right system, if you can size this to the house exactly, then use that manual J calculation, you will have peak operating efficiency. You will have basically the situation that the heat pump was rated for. So it's designed by the factory for a specific kind of condition. It's like, okay, this size system is going to be good for this much space and this much of a strong building envelope. And so the closer you get to that, the closer you get to what the performance rating is actually going to be reflected in. It's going to be controllable better. It's going to have better humidity control. It's just going to work a lot better overall and save you money in the long run. Paxton, you want to talk about the next slide?
So what we typically see for heat pump sizing in New England is a lot of oversizing and even some undersizing. So taking observations from programs that Abode participates in, we have a lot of data that can basically break down the system size that's being installed in homes and whether or not it's appropriate. So as you can see this chart here, anywhere between 90 and 150% of heating load being covered is going to be reasonably sized. So if you're under 90% of your home's heating load requirements, you're just not going to be able to condition the right amount of space. So that would be the undersized system there. And then once you hit 150% or over, you really start to see red flags, higher cost to maintain these systems, and just overall decreased comfort. And you're just not going to get what you can get out of the system. So that's why the sizing and manual J that Jamie has mentioned is very important, because you really want to make sure ideally you're staying around 100% and that your system is meeting the sizing requirements that your home's heating load is basically producing. So again, we're seeing 56% of systems sized reasonably. So it's important you really have an understanding when you're out there looking for a contract of what you're looking for, as well as what you need to ask for, so that you can get the most out of your system.
And I can interject one quick thing too. We're talking specifically about the heating size. So that the size, the amount of capacity that it needs to heat the house, almost without any outliers. If your heating size is done correctly, you will be completely fine for your cooling size.
Exactly. And the heating is important, obviously being in a colder climate. A lot of people have the preconception that these systems can't heat and heat pumps aren't effective, which we will get into more later to further kind of discuss what a cold
Totally
source air source heat pump is.
Totally are. That's good. I'll do this one too.
Yeah. So again, just kind of going off the conversation with uh, sizing is here you can see a 1,400 square foot home or less. The typical sizing load, which is what's going to be considered BTU per square foot. So this is basically a determination of how many BTUs or output of the system per square foot is an appropriate size. So the 23 there is what is really required. We find that the smaller the house is, or whatever space is being conditioned, the more challenging it is for contractors to appropriately size those systems. So as you can see, the BTU per square footage needed for a unit around 1,400 or less is actually coming out to 34 BTUs per square footage. So that is just an example of oversizing. Again, as you get into larger spaces, that sizing starts to level out and become a little bit more appropriate to what is actually required. And throw it back to Jamie here.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about distribution, the difference between a ducted system and a ductless system, the two different options for ducted systems as well. And then we talked about the capacity of the sizing of the system. So you said, okay, we know how it's going to blow the air out into the house. We know what size it's going to have to be. So now the third factor that we have to think about, it's called one of two things. Usually it's either called capacity maintenance or capacity drop off. And basically what this means is as it gets colder and colder out, the heat pump is still trying to source the same amount of heat from the outside air. So we want to make sure, okay, well, is it going to be able to produce enough heat, but not produce, but provide, I should say, enough heat for the inside of the building to work in all these different temperatures. So let's go to the next slide for a second. So basically, yeah, so these charts are a little confusing. I'm going to try to break it down a little bit better. But think about it like a V8 engine in a truck or something like that, and you're going up a really big hill. So that's a 4-ton system. Okay, we got a 4-ton system. That's 48,000 BTUs. It's 8 cylinders. We're good. When you're going up that hill, we don't want to lose 2 of those cylinders. So that's like a 75% capacity maintenance. If it's maintaining only 75% of its capacity as it gets towards the top of that hill, it's going to slow down. It's not going to get you up that hill very well. And that's the same kind of thinking that you can do with the heat pumps, where if you see the capacity maintenance of a system being, so it's only able to maintain 75% of its rated capacity when it gets to like 5 degrees outside, that's probably not going to be sufficient for full-time heat in the house in the coldest days of the winter without some kind of a backup fuel or a backup electric source, something to that effect. This is something that when you're looking at the quotes, it's not going to be very obvious, and so it may help to have somebody like an abode consultant on your team to look at the quotes with you, and we'll go over that in a little bit too, because we can actually help you look at the capacity maintenance factor for all these different units, because every heat pump on the market is rated by the manufacturers and whatnot. So trying to think of how else I can describe capacity maintenance. Like I said, the other way to think about it is capacity drop off. So it's like as it gets colder, how much of your capacity do you lose? And that's the way to look at it. The ideal for a house that's going to be full-time heated with the heat pump with no backup fuel is somewhere over 90% of its capacity to be maintained when it gets to about 5 degrees outside.
I can go over this. So all heat pump programs have a qualified product list for systems that must meet a certain criteria for efficiency standards. So Wakefield uses the NEAP cold source air source heat pump list. So this is a database of cold climate air source heat pumps that are basically confirmed and must meet all these efficiency requirements. You have HSPF2, CR2, COP. We're not going to go into these today, but this is basically looking at some of the factors that Jamie brought up, as well as just other factors that cold source air source heat pumps should have and need to have to perform effectively in cold climates. So on our end, we're looking at this and making sure that the right systems are going in. Again, because we're in the New England area, these systems have to be designed appropriately and they have to be at a certain classification of heat pump. I'm gonna go to the next one here.
The good news is for that, Paxton, there's last check, there's 150 something thousand different system combinations that are on the NEEP list as of a couple days ago. So chances are good it'll be on there. And if it's on the NEEP list, it's rebate eligible. So you want me to do this one, Paxton?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that people ask a lot about is, should I keep my oil system? Should I keep my propane system? Should I keep my gas system? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So it is an interesting equation to think about. A lot of times, if the system is towards the end of its life, probably worth getting a heat pump to replace it completely. But if you have like a brand new system, you're like, oh, but I wanted to do heat pumps too. There are ways to make them talk to each other. So something like an integrated control basically is like a fancy thermostat that reads the exterior temperature as well as the interior temperature. And it essentially talks to the heat pump and it talks to the furnace or the boiler. And it says, all right, well, at this temperature, let's say 22 degrees, for example, like at 22 degrees outside, it'll just change over to the fossil fuel system and the heat pump will turn off. And then when it's above 22 degrees, and you can set that wherever you need to set it. But if it's above that temperature, it'll use the heat pumps. And that kind of gets at what we were talking about earlier with capacity maintenance. If you have a system that has 90 or 100% capacity maintenance at 5 degrees, you don't really have to worry about having that other fuel system in place. But if you're picking a system, a heat pump system that only has 70, 75% of its capacity maintenance at 5 degrees, well, then maybe this is a situation where you keep the fossil fuel in the back and you say, well, we can switch over to the fossil fuel for the really, really cold couple days a year where it's, super, super cold out, which is not that common anymore, unfortunately. And, but, it's something that we have to deal with. And so it prioritizes the heat pump in the warmer weather when it's slightly more effective. Important distinction. I just said effective, not efficient. The heat pump is going to be just as efficient all the way down to 0 degrees or less. It's not going to be as effective. So a very important distinction. But yeah, so how much of the heat load you're trying to meet is really kind of the meat of the potatoes here. It's like, how much, if you're only putting a heat pump in to do half the house, well, then you're going to want to keep your fossil fuel system. But if you're planning on doing a full house system, you can design it in such a way that you don't need to keep that.
All right, and I think we're coming up to a transition here, talk about rebates
Right.
and funding. So I'll throw it over to Joe here and I'll click along with the slides.
So thanks, Paxton. I'm here to talk about, we have at WMGLD, we have a bunch of energy efficiency rebates and incentives, among which are ones for heat pump systems. So there's an annual rebate cap of $2,500. However, with a new offering that we just released at the beginning of this year, you can exceed that $2,500 cap if you bundle insulation with a heat pump, or if you put in a heat pump and you completely replace your fossil fuel system. So our programs have had a huge kind of growth in the past 5 years, and we have over 700 rebates that have been processed year to date. So as far as the steps for a heat pump rebate, the first step is education, trying to understand what is a heat pump. I mean, this presentation helps with doing that if you're watching it. And it's, you can contact Abode for a free consult. They have a bunch of resources and people over there that can kind of walk you through what's a heat pump, what's a proper size for a heat pump, some of the things they've already covered thus far. After that, it's finding a contractor. So it's using one from the participating contractor list from a boat is recommended. The other thing that we also would require if you were to do a insulation with heat pump bundle would be a home energy audit. So on the weatherization and insulation side of our rebate program, we require a pre-audit as well as a post-audit once those measures have been completed. Additionally, on the heat pump side, a BODE has you fill out a post installation Q&A form, and that just makes sure that you're dotting your I's, you're crossing your T's, that your heat pump is on that list. If you've contacted a BODE before with throughout the process, everything should be just a matter of paperwork there, and it should be processed. And then the last thing to do is to apply for a rebate. So once the post audit Q&A form is filled out with a BODE, once you do a post audit, if you're doing the insulation, you can go on our website and apply for a rebate. And that will be processed in roughly 4 to 6 weeks. So this slide, it kind of walks through a little bit of what I already said, but it's looking at the new enhanced heat pump program. So if you look at the chart below, previously we had a heat pump program, it was $500 per ton, up to $2,000 rebate cap on the heat pump. And then the total annual cap was $2,500. So a lot of our customers would sometimes do the heat pump and insulation. They might want to do them together, because if you do those two things together, you really increase the efficiency of the heat pump. But with the rebate cap at $2,500, that's where you kind of stop right there, and some of the work can cost a lot more than that. So we introduced a couple of new enhanced heat pump rebates that kind of coincide heat pumps with insulation, as well as heat pump with replacing fossil fuel. So the updates are $750 per ton if you go with insulation as well, which increases the heat pump cap up to $3,000, and then the insulation cap is 50% of the costs. Now it's up to $2,500, and then you can exceed the previous cap and go to $5,500 on that program. And then one step further beyond that, if you completely replace the fossil fuel system, remove it from your house, if it's a feasible option, you get $1,000 per ton, and that goes up to $5,000 on the heat pump side, and then the $2,500 for the insulation, for a total maximum value of $7,500. So, we really are pushing for kind of these bundles, because when you do the two things together, or if you're replacing your fossil fuel system completely, there's a huge impact. So part of the steps is, like I said, you got to do the pre-audit on the insulation side. You have to do a post-audit after you do the insulation. Consult with a BODE, hire contractors. You do a post installation Q&A form through a BODE on the heat pump side. And if you do all those things and you have all the paperwork, you apply online. There's one form that encapsulate this bundle, so you don't have to fill out one rebate form for a heat pump and one for insulation. There's a form that lets you check off the boxes to say, I did both of these. It's the enhanced program. And then a rebate will be calculated based on the information that a BODE provides us.
Great. And so this just next slide is putting a lot of emphasis on weatherization, because of how important it is to think about both weatherizing your home while also installing a heat pump. Because at the end of the day, if your home isn't properly air sealed and insulated, you're going to really lose the benefits of installing a heat pump. And again, that's kind of going back to what Joe was saying there, is that a lot of people have bundled these together, and there's rebates to allow you to do that. And Jamie, I don't know if you want to just touch on some of the quick benefits of air sealing and insulating your home.
Oh, it's pretty much like what you just said. The stronger the envelope, the stronger the building envelope can be, the more effective the heat pump is going to be as well. Because you're essentially saying, well, if you have a leaky house, you put the heat pump in, it's going to be heating and cooling the outside. You get all that air leakage into the attic, through the walls, etc. So, it's way more efficient if the installation is up to par. And it also means if you do your installation properly, that remember what I said about the manual J calculation, it factors in that installation. So you would actually end up with a smaller heat pump, which could save you money on the install as well.
Great. And I think there's one more slide here for Joe.
So just wanted to speak a little bit to the success of our heat pump program. I mean, it's one of our largest programs. So, it's striving for lower carbon emissions. It's creating value for our customers. It increases the efficiency, especially when bundled with the insulation. And to date, since we started the rebate program for heat pumps, we've done over 300 thus far. So it's definitely a huge program, and this shows no signs of slowing down in the future. So.
And I can even touch upon this is
Hold on, Pete wants to say something.
I just wanted to say thank you to Abode for being our partner. One of the things, if customers are listening to this, it is a little bit complicated. It's not just fit block A into slot B. There's a lot to it, and that's why we've partnered with Abode. I think that the value of having a partner like Abode to review and analyze the design that you're potentially going with, as well as provide maybe some thoughts and direction if you're just starting out in the process. Those are all incredibly valuable tools to make sure that you get this right, because as they showed, it's important to get to size the system properly. And if you're going to do that, I think having resources is incredibly valuable. I think the fact that we've had over 300 customers participate already is excellent. On a per capita basis, Wakefield is way ahead of the state average. Across the state, only 1% of the customers have installed heat pumps. In Wakefield, we're almost 2.5% of our customers. So we're hitting a much higher number, and I think part of that's due to the enhanced rebates, but also part of it's due with having an intelligent partnership with Abode. So thank you for that.
great. And I think this slide was to kind of put out there that there's also additional funding avenues. So there's actual federal tax incentives that are available. So these are tax credits, but it's, I believe right now is $2,000 up to $2,000 for 30% of the project cost. So you can,
Yes.
yeah,
30% of the project cost up to 2,000 for heat pumps, and 30% up to $600 for a panel upgrade. So if you need to upgrade your electrical panel from 100 amps to a 200 amp, let's say, there's potentially a tax credit available for that too. So, but as we say in the big letters here, call your tax professional. We're not tax professionals here, so call your tax professional so you can see if you would qualify for that.
and I'm sure everyone is wondering about the next slide, which a disclaimer, it depends. It really depends. But what we see in the Wakefield area, as well as regionally, Massachusetts, we're really seeing a wide range of costs. So anywhere from 5,000 and sometimes even lower to 8,000 and sometimes even higher. But typically, we're looking at about $5,000 to $8,000 per ton when installed. So the biggest considerations here for cost are whether you have that existing ductwork and you're looking to put in a ducted system, your home size and heating and cooling needs and goals. So whether or not you're planning to run this as your sole source of heating or whether it's supplemental. These really are going to decide the cost of the systems, as well as looking for contractors. I can say it is a little daunting going out there and getting quotes for systems, because you could honestly be looking for the same thing and go to 3 separate contractors who might quote you all good systems, but they might vary in costs from even up to $15,000 between 3 separate quotes. So just putting a lot of emphasis that it ranges based on your project and based on even who you pick as a contractor. So that's going to go into our next slide here. Jamie, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of working with the BOD that you guys have taken advantage of here is that we have a quote comparison tool that we developed. And we can do basically up to 5 different quotes. We can look at those for you, for the customer, and kind of help you rate them and rank them. And we'll go over a little bit about that in a sec. But there's a really easy customer intake. You just fill out some basic information about your house, about your goals. Give us a little bit of fuel data if you have fuel data usage. And then you basically upload up to 5 different proposals. Go to the next slide there. And when you're all said and done, so here's one that we did that came out with 3 different quotes. And you can see the difference in the prices here. Max was talking about as just some examples. One was 54,000, the other 2 were in the 20s. And these are for very similar systems. So very interesting what I see when I do these quote comparisons. But basically, you'll get a report at the end, and then once you get the report, you can book another consult with me to talk about the results of the report essentially, and kind of figure out. Because one of the things that it will do down towards the bottom there, it'll give you a system fit score out of a possible 10 points. You know, for each system that you've put a proposal together for here, how well does this actually fit with what you've said you're going to use the system for? How well does it fit with your house? A lot of this, you know, if you get the manual J calculation done, you can upload that so we can be even more accurate about this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that it will come out of this report. And you know, it's remarkable what I can see from some of these. So the first page is your summary. The next page is kind of go over what your rebates might be for some of them. This one was a customer that had a bigger rebate. I don't know what town they were in, but that's irrelevant for this. But it kind of just breaks down the visual of the equipment that you have. It shows you approximately how well it's sized. We were talking about the sizing earlier. Gives you some examples or estimates about what your heating and cooling costs will be for the year with each one of the systems. It's really kind of in depth. And you know, when you get the report, if you have questions about it, I'm here for you. You don't actually even need to necessarily have a consult with me first. You can actually just use this quote tool on the Abode website, and we'll provide you a link to that in a little bit. So even if you haven't had a full formal heat pump consultation with me or with Abode, you can still take advantage of the quote comparison tool, although we do recommend both, obviously, and they're all no cost to you guys. I don't think we have to get too deep into this, Paxton, but this is basically just the behind the scenes process of how the tool works. It's pretty incredible, actually. So our advice. Okay, so our advice when working with the HVAC installers, when you're getting the proposals, as I said at the beginning, request the manual J. That's the size and calculation. Like I said, you only really need to get one contractor to do this. And sometimes, honestly, they may say, well, we won't do this for free until you sign a contract, or we won't do this, but if you pay us a couple $100 or something like that, we'll do it for you. I've found from my experience talking with customers, it's been worth the upfront cost if they do charge you a little bit like that, because you can share it with every contractor, and then that allows you to, get the right size equipment, which will inevitably lower your overall operating costs for the system. So it is worthwhile to get that as early as possible, in my opinion. And if you're doing installation work, make sure that the manual J calculation reflects that you're going to be changing the insulation in the house so that they can model it so that it doesn't get oversized at the end. Number 2, request that they quote models that meet the specific demands of your situation and are rebate eligible. So they have to be on the NEEP list, as we talked about. And we want to make sure that that capacity maintenance, how well it maintains its capacity over the colder weather, we want to make sure that that's in line with what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to use the heat pump as your primary sole source heat, we want to make sure that they're quoting you a model that's not 70%. We want to capacity maintenance. We want to have models that are in the 90s or hundreds. So something to think about. And every reliable contractor should know what a capacity maintenance is. So you should ask them that. We want to review where it's going to go. So the outdoor units and sometimes the indoor units, absolutely. If you're not doing a ducted system, you want to know ahead of time, where are you planning on putting this thing? We want to make sure that there's a good outdoor space for it, for the outdoor unit. If there's a couple outdoor units, we want to make sure there's enough space. We want to make sure that they've evaluated where they're going to put the refrigerant lines on the building, that kind of thing. The electrical panel should be evaluated at the beginning. Almost every single contractor that works out there has an electrician that they partner with or would recommend. So if you don't have your own electrician, I would just ask the installer. And then the last thing would be to confirm their availability to assist with the rebate process. Like Joe was saying, it's a pretty easy application, honestly, if you have all the right information in front of you. So some contractors will be able to help, kind of fill in the details for you. And it's always a good question to ask at the beginning.
And again, this is kind of just a wrap on the things that we've discussed here, but ideally getting 3 separate quotes is really the smart way to go. As you saw, that was a real world example of someone who got 3 different quotes and ranged almost $15,000 more between quotes. So we have a participating contractor list of contractors that we help onboard onto the program who've met the right qualifications, licensing, and have affirmed that they are willing to serve Wakefield customers and help with the rebate process. So take advantage of the quote comparison tool, select an installer, and then basically apply for rebates. There is a link there to our web page, and then we're actually going to open it up here for a Q&A session. I've found that it's been really helpful for residents to be able to ask questions. So if you just take a look at your screen up at the very top next to the person icon, there's a raise your hand symbol. So if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, feel free. We can also look at unmuting everyone or even using the chat. So if anybody wants to throw something in there. So I'll open it up to the public to see if anyone has any questions. All right, so I see Sharon. I'm gonna see.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very informative. I just wanted to know if you could tell me what the average lifespan of a ductless mini split would be for cold climate heat pumps.
They're
Thank you.
pretty. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. It's pretty close to being in line with what you would see for a regular central air conditioning, about 12 to 15, maybe 16, 17 years if you're using it really nicely and if it's sized properly. So somewhere in that ballpark, around 15 years is what they estimate.
Thank you.
Yep.
I believe Eric, you are unmuted and you can
Yes. Good evening, folks. Again, thank you for the presentation. Question about the contractor portion. Um, are we required to use a contractor on the list, or is that just strongly recommended to use contractors on the list?
Yeah, not required. So if you have a contractor you like to work with, there's nothing stopping you. Just you're gonna have to follow through with just the proper rebate, requirements and proper equipment selection. So as long as you're going through the typical rebate process, and as it is up on the screen here, just you can go to the web page, but you're free to use anyone. And if there is a contractor or you're a contractor who's interested in joining the program, you can reach out to us and get onboarded onto the participating contractor list. That way, people can choose from you.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
No problem. All right, and I believe Brian has a question here.
Yes, please. Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. And I guess I was wondering, is there currently like an expiration date on either the light department rebates or the federal tax credits, and are those gonna go away anytime soon? I guess political stuff could influence some of that too.
I'll speak to the light department rebates. Our rebates were, board met last month and approved our budget for next year. So we treat our rebate programs on a year-to-year basis. So our programs have been funded for 2025. As far as the federal credits go, that's obviously up in the air in terms of as we change administrations. But from the local level, our rebates are set for next year.
Okay, thanks for that. I got a couple more questions if you'd take them too. I guess I was curious on the insulation part of it. I did do the energy audit, and they had a recommendation to put in the thick layer of the loose fill insulation in my attic, which is a little bit of a problem in that I've got the plywood floor and I use it for storage. So in order to do that, the guy said I'd have to rip out the plywood and basically lose functional space in my house. So is it basically a requirement that you have to follow all the recommendations in the audit?
No, so the audit is kind of more of it's a guideline to see like, all right, these are some things that you could kind of look at in your home. And you don't have to follow it to a T. And then as far as if you were going to bundle the two together, the heat pump and the insulation, because I don't know if I think I said it in the slide, but I don't know if I specifically mentioned it. For you to be eligible for the bundle, it has to be $1,000 or more worth of insulation. So as long as you're meeting those guidelines, you don't have to necessarily do exactly what the energy audit said. That's just a good guideline.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for that. And then as far as the rebates, is that like a credit on your bill? When I bought appliances in the past, they give you a credit on your bill, or did they write you a check, or how does it work for that?
Yeah, so it's usually processed as a bill credit. For the larger ones, we'd kind of see on a case by case basis, but usually it's a bill credit.
Okay, thanks. And I guess one more, if you don't mind. So I did go down and look at my electrical panel as you guys were talking there, and I've got a 100 amp service. Is that something you need to go to a separate electrician for an upgrade, or would the HVAC contractors be able to do that, or is that another you might need an installation contractor, or an electrician, HVAC, or is that kind of a third contractor you need for the electrical upgrade?
Generally speaking, most HVAC installers will have an electrician that they partner with or work with. And so that electrician could be the one that you use, or you could potentially bring in another party if you wanted to do some price shopping or quoting around for that stuff. But for the actual install, I would usually trust the electrician that the heat pump guys work with.
Yep. Okay.
And I just want to mention just too, for the installation for your attic, depending on how much space is underneath the floorboards between the old insulation and the attic floorboards, there may be a way to insulate that, dense packing it underneath the floorboards. So there may be a way to do that. I would still recommend talking to a couple insulation contractors just to see if there's room up there, because that can be a good solution so you can keep your storage up there too.
Yeah, the space under the plywood is completely full, but he thought that I needed another certain amount, you know.
Okay,
But that's all my questions. Thanks for your patience.
thanks.
All right, I'm gonna throw it off to Eric here, who should be able to.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, just hearing Brian chat made me think of another question. So thanks for humoring me. So I've been living in this house now for about 4 years, and as soon as we moved in, we had an energy audit. We've chipped away at a bunch of things. We had a new roof put on with interior and exterior insulation last year. And so I've had the audit done quite a few times and verification of things. How do I need to have someone come back and do an audit again if I already have items on the list that did not get dealt with? For example, I know the walls have little to no insulation on most of the walls. Do I need to have them come back and verify that in order to qualify for the insulation rebate if I've already got it in writing at some point in the last few years? Or what's that sequence look like with the net zero folks?
Yeah, so I think usually it's good for 2 years is kind of the grace period that we give it. So if you did it 4 years ago, you'd probably have to just re-up it. And it, like you said, there's certain measures are going to be the same. But I think that's just so we know, like, all right, because things could change over 8 years. Maybe it's gotten worse. Certain things have gotten worse. There's other things, and so we have you just re-up it every couple of years to be eligible for that side of things.
Okay,
But
so
luckily it is free. So,
okay,
but yeah,
all right. I'll reach out to those folks then. Thank you.
no problem.
Any other questions in the crowd here? These are all great questions. We have a little more time if anyone wants to ask anything.
Hey, you guys seem to be talking in per ton. Maybe using an example of that 1,400 square foot house from the presentation. What's how many tons are typical insulation for a 3-bedroom house or something?
For like a 1,400 square foot ranch or something like that, you mean, or like a small colonial, probably 2 to 3 tons,
actually, probably
somewhere in that ballpark. Usually,
I'm sorry.
between usually like 2 to 3 tons is usually enough. But
Okay.
again, you want to have it. Every house is maddeningly different.
Yeah.
Even ones that look the same on the outside could have different complete needs based on, maybe one person keeps it at 65, maybe one person keeps it at 70. So that can change the size needs of the system too. So you want to make sure that you have all the different variables accounted for. But yeah, generally speaking, 2 to 3 tons. And 1 ton is equal to 12,000 BTUs, in case anybody needs to know that interesting calculation from the British thermal units that are all about how many candles it takes to make a degree of water raise 1 degree. Yeah. So, but yeah, good question. Cool. Well, if anybody else has any other questions, I strongly encourage you to go to our website there, theabode.energy/WMGLD, and schedule a consult. It's free, and it can really help, kind of straighten out some interesting questions about things for you. So I just want to say a big thank you to Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light for having Abode here today. Thanks for letting us do this presentation for you, and it's we enjoy the partnership.
Thank you for the engaged crowd too here.
Yes, absolutely.
It's already in a webinar format, and sometimes it's hard to connect behind a computer here. So thanks for the good questions.
Yeah, I was just going to add that in. These, especially if people are going to go back and watch this on the recorded version, the questions are extremely helpful. So thank you for the folks that have joined us tonight that asked questions, because it's all helpful to make the product stronger too. Thank you.
All right. With that, everyone have a great night, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.